Hello and welcome to Lost Love Chronicles.
I'm not sure why, but I found myself, at age 53, drinking coffee in Starbucks feeling on top of the world. I was happy, successful, and married to a beautiful woman. What could possibly happen to lose all this? My beautiful wife, Jan, was a few years younger than me at 47 but didn't look a day over 35. Long legs and always perfectly dressed, looking like $1,000,000. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and I beheld a lot. There were two sides to that coin, as Jan could dress down if the occasion called for it. She didn't mind getting dirty and sweaty. From working in the yard to backpacking, Jan is always ready to go. We trekked near the North Pole, rode camels in the desert at sunrise, hiked the Machu Picchu Trail, and scaled mountains. One year we backpacked the Grand Canyon. These were all followed by a 5-star resort holiday. She had the most delightful personality of any person I have ever met. She never met anyone that she couldn't charm, and she always knew exactly the correct way of saying what you want to hear. I always thought her personality was worth a fortune. There was no lack of conversation when she was around. She had her degree and was actually a CPA and head of accounting at a large downtown hospital. She worked with staggering amounts of money. The hospital was doing over $1 billion in business every year, all processed through her office. She had a lot of responsibility and often had to work late. I understood that and realized it just came with the job. I never once questioned her about working late, but always tried to be supportive. We met in college. She was just starting, and I was there getting a couple of courses to get my real estate license. For me, it was love at first sight, but I had to be very persuasive before I got a date. I knew she had been in relationships and was not a virgin, but I never asked about her life before I met her, as it wasn't important. We dated exclusively for almost a year before we had sex, and that was brought on by a ring and marriage proposal. We had a lovely wedding and awesome honeymoon. We didn't leave our room for 3 days, and only then because we were worn out. Sex with Jan was unbelievable. She was up to anything that just involved us and was totally proactive. She wasn't the passive lay there and do nothing type of girl. Sex was always fun, and even to this day, sex continued to be neither vanilla or ordinary. Back home from our honeymoon, Jan continued with her degree plans, although graduating came a little later because of the birth of our 2 wonderful children. I was making good money, and we were able to hire a nanny so she could finish her degree. She finished her degree and was hired almost immediately by a large accounting firm in Dallas. So our nanny stayed with us until the children were in school. She worked very hard and was promoted, and soon was headhunted by another accounting firm, and then finally was hired at the hospital. It seemed like she was promoted every couple of years before she became chief of accounting. That was 5 years ago, and she has remained happily since. I work as a licensed real estate broker, specializing in commercial property. I work with 4 different agencies, but seem to always have a nice catalog of property, not just in Dallas, but also in Oklahoma City and Little Rock. Because of this, I often have to travel between the 3 cities. Our children, Jim Jr. and Mary, have been wonderful kids and have made Jan and I proud. Jim has finished college and is working in San Francisco, while Mary is still in school here in Dallas and planning a June wedding after finishing her degree in May. I hope Mary will work with me and continue in my business after her wedding. Mary has many of her mom's traits which are very marketable. She will do well. Back to a year ago in Starbucks. My time is flexible as I don't really keep hours unless I have an appointment. I try to call Jan every day around 4:30 to see what time she will be home and discuss our dinner plans. Go out, do takeaway, or make something at home. Today was Friday, and Jan and I always go out to eat on Friday night. We have been married 25 years, and I could count on one hand the number of times we had not gone out on a Friday night. If we were working, we simply downed whatever we are doing. We rarely took work home, but sometimes we had to go back in on the weekend to get something finished. But Friday night was our time. Period. I had arrived at Starbucks a little too early to bother Jan about dinner, so I was going to enjoy a cup of coffee first. I had ordered an Americano and was sipping it while sitting on a stool facing the plate glass window in front of the store. Across the street was the hospital, and on my left side was a large parking garage. The hospital was connected by the parking garage by a pedestrian bridge high above the road. There were 5 exits from the garage and 2 lanes entering the road, which were the exclusive use of people exiting the garage. I wasn't paying particular attention, but did notice a large Chrysler 300 exit the garage and came to a stop at a traffic light right in front of Starbucks. What caught my attention was that Jan was in the passenger seat. I thought that was odd because she always tells me of any meetings outside the hospital. I picked up my phone and called Jan's office and asked to speak to her, but was told she had left for the day. So I called Jan. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Jan, where are you?" She replied, "I'm in my office snowed under with an important report that has to be finished. I am in Starbucks and have come into town to celebrate a big sale and take you to Austin for dinner at our favorite restaurant, and afterwards we can spend the night there." Her only response, "I can't tonight, but can I get a rain check?" Followed by, "Are you in Starbucks across from the hospital? I thought you were in Oklahoma City." I replied, "Yes, I am in Starbucks and I didn't have to travel today. I wondered if she knew that I had seen her. Can I bring up a cup of favorite coffee along with a salad so you can get on with your report? She hurriedly said something I couldn't understand, then she said, one of the girls has left me a sandwich and a soft drink. Jen added, pick something up on the way home for yourself, and I will be there as soon as I can. I checked my Find a Phone app and saw their car had by now stopped at a rather famous address I knew well, the Hilton Hotel. I said, are you in your office now? Yes. I replied, I will see you at home if you don't want my company. I can get the work finished quicker on my own. I replied, okay, see you later, and hung up. I thought Jan and I had a fairy tale life. We didn't lack for money. We both drove expensive cars, paid for by me. We lived in a large rambling ranch-style house on 5 acres. The yard was professionally landscaped and cared for, and it looked like a park rather than a home. Away from work, we were always together. To an outsider, we were obviously in love and committed to each other. Jan saved every dance for me, never allowing another man to dance with her, even if I told her it was okay. She simply said she didn't want another man's hands on her. She never gave me a reason to even be jealous. I never once thought Jan of being unfaithful. The thought never entered my mind. I thought our sex life was awesome. We were never afraid to experiment and try new things as long as nobody else was involved. After we were married, we had sex daily and sometimes twice. After the children came, our daily sex slowed to when we had an opportunity, 2 or 3 times a week. After Mary left, we tried to have sex every day. I was very much a one-woman man, and Jan knew my feelings concerning infidelity. I was now in my early 50s and was starting to have problems reaching an orgasm. I talked to my doctor and was given some little blue pills, but I was still not capable of recreating the sex we had in our early days. Jan had no problems and seemed always ready to go. I tried to get Jan to have sex daily, but she said if it was hard for me, then she would do without. She didn't want sex unless I wanted sex too. So, 3 times a week we had sex. I really worked hard to make Jan happy, at times sexually. I felt bad for Jan, but she seemed happy and content. Not in my wildest dreams did I think that if Jan wasn't getting enough at home, she would find it elsewhere. I sat there for several minutes feeling just emotionally shattered. I felt like my entire world had crashed around my feet. Several people asked if I was okay. Finally, I just got up and drove home. I was sitting in the dark when Jan arrived home. Why are you sitting in the dark? I've had a very bad day and I'm upset. Okay. What is your next question? We never snapped at each other, but I felt justified. When you called, you said you were excited over closing on a large sale. So why are you now upset? Because I've recently learned of some very disturbing news. What could be so bad? If you don't know, then you've no reason to ask. I got up and poured a large brandy and took it into the den and sat down. I skipped dinner, so the brandy went straight to my head. I sat in the den for perhaps 30 minutes and got up and went to the guest bedroom to sleep. I did nothing but roll and tumble all night. I couldn't get past what she had done to our marriage, but then what if this wasn't the first time? How long had she been cucking me? One thing for sure, I would not tolerate being a cuck. Period. Now let's check from Jan's perspective. Jim and I have had a fairy tale marriage. We have never been what I would consider poor. We've been very fortunate, and together we brought 2 wonderful children into this world, and they have both been given every opportunity to succeed, and they have, I'm proud to say, capitalized on the opportunity. Jim and I have always shared everything and take advantage of every opportunity to travel and seek new experiences. Whether it is roughing it backpacking or staying in a 5-star resort, we've always had fun and always look forward to the next adventure. We both look younger than our age. Jim carries a few extra pounds, but his face is as young as it was 30 years ago. Aging has been good to Jim. Sex, once vibrant and exciting, has become a little vanilla for me. Jim has problems, and even with the help of his blue pills, he has problems with orgasms. He has seen his doctor, who just reports it to be an aging problem. He has suggested that Jim join a gym and get more exercise, and that might help. Jim, bless his heart, tries effortlessly to keep me pleased. He wants to please me every day. Finally, I told him if twice a week is good for him, then it would be good for me. About a year ago, I got a new boss at work, David Alexander. I'm the chief of accounting and have several accountants working under me, but my boss is one of 4 hospital administrators and my section comes under his control. David started flirting with me the day he started work. At first, I found myself flattered that someone over 10 years younger than me would find me attractive at my age. He always commented on how I was dressed and seemed to agree with everything I say. His flirting eventually got more expressive, and then there were slight touches. I tried to shake them off and finally told him that although I was very flattered, I was happily married and did not want his attention. David finally backed off for a few months. 3 months ago, he cornered me in my office after work. Thankfully, everyone had gone home for the night. David was very forthright and asked why I turned down his advances. I simply told him that I was happily married and did not want to start anything that would upset my marriage. David was very smooth. He said, "You look like a frustrated wife to me. I bet your husband cannot even get a good hard-on. When was the last time you really got sex?" I honestly couldn't remember but didn't reply. I told him I did not want to listen to trash talk and got up to open the door and see him out when he grabbed me. I tried to push him away, but he was so much larger and stronger than me I couldn't move him. He grabbed both hands with one of his and then kissed me. The kiss extended to a lot of touching, and finally he gave me a wild climax. The next few moments were a little awkward, but I managed to straighten my clothes, and David simply asked when we could do this again. I don't know what I was thinking, but said my husband would be out of town on Wednesday, so maybe after work that day. That marked the beginning of my affair. Did I feel used? Of course I did. Did I feel guilty? My guilt and remorse were overpowering, especially when I saw Jim. However, what overpowered everything was my desire to be drilled like that again. Not gentle, safe-loving sex like Jim and I share, but the rough, dominant, sometimes painful sex that David provided. It just blew me away. We continued our clandestine affair without any problems until last Friday. We had been very careful. Sex in my office after work, or if Jim was away, we would treat ourselves to a hotel. I was never terribly late getting home, nor did I change the way I dressed. I have always dressed professionally, but with sexy underwear. I always wear heels. Jim was supposed to be in Oklahoma City till late Friday night, but apparently he didn't go at all, and then in the afternoon, after David and I were on our way to the Hilton, Jim called and wanted to take me to Austin for a special dinner. I begged out, but somewhere deep down I felt he had caught on to what was going on. However, I didn't want to admit it. I realize now that I should have gone with Jim. When I got home, freshly screwed, and I'm sure it showed on my face, Jim was sitting in the dark and very angry. He wouldn't tell me what was going on. This in itself should have sent daggers my way. We shared everything, except that I was having an affair. Jim eventually turned to a bottle of brandy and got drunk and slept in the guest bedroom. Now let's check from Jim's perspective. Finally, I got up from a very troubled night of little sleep. I showered and staggered into the kitchen for coffee. Jan was sitting at the table and spoke first. Good morning. How did you sleep in the spare bedroom? I slept awful, if you must know. I don't think I even got an hour's sleep. Can you share what's troubling you so much? I looked at her as if I was completely dumbfounded by such a dumb question before I responded. Jan, is there anything you would like to share with me? What do you mean? Are you angry because I had to work on a Friday night and we didn't go out to dinner? When did work become more important than family? We've always done whatever we were doing on Friday night and had a night out. Maybe work has become more fun than spending time with me. Who is he? She gave me a puzzled look and obviously didn't want to answer. She became fidgety and got up and started a new pot of coffee, trying to avoid the question. I saw you. I even called your office and was told you were gone for the day. I know you went to the Hilton. Game over. How could you do such a thing to us? To me? To our family? I thought we meant more to each than some cheap affair. I'm sorry. I never meant for this to happen. I have been fighting it for over a year, and in the end I was weak, and my body responded, and I became lost. His name is David Alexander, my boss. We tried to be careful so you would never find out. I am so deeply sorry. First of all, you well know my feelings on infidelity. Our marriage is over. I have never in my life been so hurt as I am now. My heart feels like someone stuck a dagger in it. I have been betrayed by my best friend, my lover, my soulmate, my wife. We have always shared everything. Never, in my wildest dreams, did I think this would ever happen. At this point, I am not even sure if I want to continue living. If we didn't have children, I know what path I would choose. Jan, I know, was crying hard. She saw the pain I was in, but I didn't need her pity. Finally, she got some control and asked, is there anything that I could do to make our marriage reparable? The simple answer is no, but at this time I'm not coherent and cannot think this through. However, there might be some steps you can do to regain your dignity. First of all, the affair has to end now. You need to file a sexual harassment case against your lover, as it appears he took advantage of you. Both of you might lose your jobs because of that, but it is the right thing to do. Finally, you need to quit your job and then file against the hospital. You're a CPA and won't have problems getting a good job. She thought a moment. I am not sure if could agree to all that. I got up to leave the kitchen. Where are you going? I'm leaving. I'll let you know where I am staying. I will see a lawyer in the morning, and we'll try to not make it more painful than it needs to be. However, you and your lover will not come out of this unscathed. You can mark my words on that. I will not be a cuck. I will call the kids this afternoon and let them know their mother is a cheating 304. Please leave the kids out of this. Aren't they part of this family too? Yes, but I don't want them to be hurt by this. It's a little too late to worry about that. They are adults and need to know. You are just worried about your popularity. With that said, I went and packed 2 suitcases, gathered my business items, and packed the car. I came back into the kitchen and Jan was still sitting at the table crying. Jan, do all those things I requested, and if you want to talk, I will be happy to sit down and talk with you about our marriage. I will let you know where I am staying. And with it, I was gone. I wondered if I would ever step foot in my house again. Our local holiday and had a delicious breakfast, and that is where I ended up. I inquired about a weekly professional rate and made reservations for 2 weeks. I texted Jan and let her know where I was staying. I wondered why I did that, but old habits are hard to change. The next day was Sunday, and I sat in my room all day thinking and basically feeling sorry for myself. I knew I needed to talk to my children, so I sent them a text saying I needed to speak with both of them urgently with some important, but bad, news. They both replied, "Call now." I broke the sad news that their mother had cheated and was involved in an ongoing affair for the past few months. Both wanted to know how I found out, so I told them. They were heartbroken but promised me their support. They had tons of questions, but I had few answers. I told them I had moved out and was staying in the Holiday Inn near our old house. Sadly, we finally said goodbye. Jan called within minutes. "How could you turn our kids against me?" "I didn't turn our kids against you. Your actions have hurt our children, and that is what you were hearing. I told you I was going to tell them. I won't tell your friends or your parents. That will be your job, and I am sure you can come up with some phony excuse why I have left you. You need to be aware, though, that the truth always comes out in the end." I had just hung up the phone with her when there was a knock at the door. It was my daughter, Mary. She came in and held me, and we both had a good cry together. She knew my hurt and pain, and I was glad to have someone to share it with. We talked for over an hour, and she wanted every detail, which, unfortunately, I didn't know much. Finally, Mary said she was going to see her mother. About 2 hours later, I had a text from Mary that I needed to talk to Mom because there was a lot more to the story than I knew. I replied, "Okay." Somewhat reluctantly, I called Jan. "I know Mary has been to see you, and she asked me to call you and talk." I promised her I would so talk. "What I am going to say will hurt. Are you sure you want to hear it?" "Yes. You've told Mary, and she obviously thinks I need to hear it too, so let's hear it." So she told the entire story of her affair. Not willing in the beginning, but an active participant since. The story did hurt. The good-looking creep is over 10 years younger than Jan, over 15 years younger than me. He was way more dominant in bed than I have ever been. I guess everything added together made him a stud. I was going to burn his bum to the frying pan for screwing up my marriage. No wonder Jan got hooked on sex with him, but that did not excuse the fact that she had cheated on me, not just once, but weekly for months. I couldn't get past that. My lawyer, Frank Finley, is a personal friend, and I called him at home and explained what was going on, and he said to be in his office first thing the next day. Frank, if a friend at home, but always professional in the office, and I knew he charged accordingly, even to friends. I told him what I wanted to do with Jan, file for divorce, have it served, and then sit on it for 90 days. I wanted action taken against her lover immediately. I wanted him sued for sexual harassment and sue the hospital too. There should be some morality clauses in the hospital, especially when upper-level management takes advantage of subordinates. They should accept some blame. Even if the suit never went anywhere, it would garner some unwanted publicity. I asked Frank if there was any way that this creep's wife could accidentally find out today that he had been having an affair. Frank, the crafty lawyer that he is, called David Alexander's home and talked to the wife posing as an accountant from the Hilton, inquiring about several credit card charges over the past 3 months and further explaining there was a corporate rate which would save David a lot of money in the future. David's wife took all of 10 seconds to figure out what was going on. I'm sure she would be frying his bum too. About an hour later, I had a phone call from Jan. "Why have you already brought disgrace to David's family? Are you at work? Have you accepted any of my proposals?" "Yes, I am at work and I am still thinking about your proposals." Wrong answer. I have already seen Frank and I had asked him to hold off on the divorce paperwork until I saw what you were going to do. Now I know. I hope you have a great life. Without waiting for a response, I hung up the phone feeling empty. My last hope of some type of redemption faded into the wind. Jan was not willing to do anything I had suggested. I called Frank and told him to serve on Jan and proceed as quickly as possible. Do not hold back. I went to the bank and split our accounts. We have always had a joint account with our paychecks going into that account. We have never tried to separate our money into his and hers. I split everything 50-50 and opened a new account in my name only and ordered new credit cards. I called into work and had my accounts transferred over to one of the other brokers and took 30 days of vacation. I needed to get away and clear my head. I decided to go to Jamaica and just find a bolt hole on the beach. Frank moved with the speed of sound. The next day, Jan was served and charged with adultery. David Alexander was sued, as was the hospital. I wasn't sure I had a charge against Alexander or the hospital, but I felt better. I didn't think Jan would object or fight the divorce. I let everyone that had a need to know that I would be away for the next 30 days. I wasn't sure I would either have access to email or a signal for my cell phone. I bought some beachwear and a good pair of running shoes and left. Just like that. I felt I was running away, but then I thought, what I am fleeing from? A cheating wife? Now let's check from Jan's perspective. After Jim left, I cried all afternoon. I went to bed and just laid there and cried and wondering how the hell did I allow myself to get my life in such a mess. Sunday afternoon, my children called and gave me a really hard time. I felt totally disgraced and wanted to blame Jim for telling them, but I realized I was the one who had let the family down. Mary came over that evening and wanted to know every detail. How do you tell your children that you've had mind-blowing sex but not with their father? I told her how I resisted for so long before he overpowered me, and then I became a willing participant. Mary asked if I had told her father the man took advantage, and I just said no. Jim called later, and I had to repeat everything to him. It was harder telling your husband about your lover than telling Mary. I felt completely humiliated. The next day, I got up as normal and went to work. I didn't know what to do because of Jim's proposals. I didn't have a problem filing a sexual harassment charge against David, but I didn't want to lose my job. I had forgotten that Jim told me that when the news got out, my job would be history. I wish I had listened to him. I was served on Tuesday. Early afternoon, David called me very angry. Someone had alerted his wife to our affair, and now he had been sued by Jim for sexual harassment. He was beyond angry, and even on the phone I felt frightened. David is a big, powerful man. I called Jim to ask why he was doing all this to David, and Jim wanted to know if I had done any of the things he had requested. I told him I was still thinking about them, and he remarked angrily and hung up. Maybe for the first time, I realized Jim was pushing the divorce through. Maybe I was naive, but I thought Jim would in the end forgive me. Very shortly after this, I was served. I immediately called the hospital CEO and asked to see him before he left for the day. He said come up now, and he would clear his immediate schedule. I explained, yet again in somewhat graphic detail, how David had succeeded in seducing me in the affair. I worked for David, and I felt he used his position to seduce me. I told him that I didn't want to quit, but I felt, under the circumstances, that I should. He already been notified of the upcoming legal action against the hospital, so he did little to dissuade me. I didn't know, but David had already been fired. I returned to my office and packed my things and left for the final time. I went from a happy, working wife to unemployed, unhappy woman within 4 days. I had lost my husband, my job, and, even though it hurts to admit it, but my lover too. David called me that night saying his wife kicked him out of the house and wanted to know if he could move in with me. I told him not just no, but no way. Furthermore, I would not be upset if I never saw him again. I called Mary and asked her if she could spend a few days with me as I didn't want to be alone. She had just finished her last semester of college, so she was free. Mary was aware of the demands Jim had made and asked, "Does Dad know that you had complied with 2 of the demands?" "No, Dad doesn't know because I haven't filed a sexual harassment suit against my lover." I admitted the affair was finished but didn't know how to file the suit, and our lawyer friend was representing Dad. Mary said, "My fiancé has just passed his bar exams, so let's get him to represent you." Mary's fiancé was sharp. He wasted no time in filing the sexual harassment suit, and then he suggested that since David was Jan's boss, file against the hospital too. So we did. She then suggested calling Jim and explaining why it took so long to complete his suggestions. The call went to voicemail. I also called his room at the Holiday Inn but was told he had checked out. A couple of weeks passed, and David called again and wanted to meet with me. Everything had calmed down by now, and I agreed to meet him at Denny's. We drank coffee and commiserated with each other. There was a hotel behind Denny's where David was staying, and before I realized what was happening, we were in bed. He certainly knew his way with women. We stayed in bed all afternoon. I am sure I would be sore, but I was going home to an empty house, so that didn't bother me. We did agree to meet as often as possible, but I demanded discretion. I had started to see a counselor, but when David and I started having sex again, I used the counselor as an excuse to see David. I didn't love him, but the sex was mind-blowing. Jim simply vanished. Now let's check from Jim's perspective. Jamaica was fun. I wanted to get more exercise, so I ran on the beach every morning. I could only run a short distance at first, but within 2 weeks I was running 3 miles. My excess weight seemed to melt away. I became a suntan beach bum and loved every second of it. I checked into the real estate market and discovered property was actually affordable compared to what the prices were in Dallas. I thought of myself retiring at an early age of just 53. Even after splitting our accounts, I was still left with a hefty sum and no bills. There would still be money from the family house because that would have to be sold. After a lot of thought, I put a deposit on a 2-bedroom bungalow on the beach. It was just a short walk from shops and restaurants, and of course bars. I was disconnected from the world, and for a man who lived from one stress to the next, this was a welcome change. I knew I had to return to Dallas to finalize the legal proceedings. I didn't expect anything from the lawsuits, but I had to check in and see what was happening. I need to close bank accounts and transfer money, and I wanted to see my kids, especially as Mary was getting married in a few days. My first call was to Mary, and she answered on the first ring. "Dad, I am so excited to hear from you. Where have you been?" "I have become a beach bum, and that is to become my new career. Anyway, I have returned for your wedding. Is it going to schedule?" "Yes, it is a week from Saturday, and everything is arranged. No worries. Mom has been such a big help since she quit her job." That got my attention. "Mom has quit." "Dad, she quit on that first Tuesday afternoon after you left her, and that creep, and the hospital was sued on Wednesday. She would have done that Monday had she been able to find a suitable lawyer to represent her." I was starting to feel uncomfortable. Why didn't she let me know? "Dad, where have you been?" Did you have cell phone coverage or email? She has tried so many times to let you know that we have given up. I really didn't know how to respond. The short answer came first. No, there was cell phone reception or email where I was. In fact, I have only now turned my cell phone on for the first time. I see there are a lot of texts and emails. Mom also has been seeing a counselor twice a week for the past 4 weeks. She has really tried to go back to the person she was. I have spent most of my time with her. She is a wreck and badly needs someone with her. I hear what you say, but my marriage with your mom is history. I'm not sure I can ever trust her. Besides, she had the best ever sex with her lover. Why would she want to come back to me when the best I can offer is good for me but vanilla for her? Mom loves you, and I don't think the sex thing is an issue anymore. I will talk to your mom, maybe today, but I'm not promising anything. I think our marriage is unrecoverable. However, I promise you we will be a couple for your wedding. I don't want anything to ruin my baby's big day. After the phone call, I went to Frank's office to see what was going on with the legal actions we had taken. The divorce was proceeding, and within 30 days the judge would hear the case and announce the divorce. The 2 legal cases were another matter. David Alexander had been fired, and he also had a divorce action pending. His life was next to worthless now. The hospital was denying any responsibility. Frank reported that Jan had cases against both as well, and he thought each case stood a much better chance than ours. I told him to drop our case against Alexander, but keep the hospital case pending to see what they planned to do. The initial hearing was approaching in 2 weeks. From Frank's office, I went to my office. I told the office manager of my retirement plans and that I wouldn't be returning. I wasn't rich, but living in Jamaica was cheap, and I could do cheap for a long time. Besides, we still had the proceeds from the sale of our house. I needed to talk to Jan about that because she was still living in the house. So, for the first time in several weeks, I find myself pulling up to my house. The last time I was here, I wasn't sure about returning. Jan opened the front door before I got out of the car. Hello, David. You look wonderful and tan. You've lost weight too. Yes, the last 4 weeks have agreed with me. None of my old clothes fit anymore. We settled in the kitchen and Jan made a fresh pot of coffee. We have a lot to discuss, and I guess I don't know where to start. You know our divorce will be settled in 30 days. We will have to divide the property, including the house. What do you want to do about the house? I haven't really thought that far. I guess we could sell it, although I hate to see it go. It's been our home almost since we got married. Would you like to buy out my share and stay here? No, the house is too big for just one person, and there are too many memories, mostly good ones. I can't stay here, so I guess we must list it. Do you know any good realtors? I'm sure I can find a realtor, but I can't sell our home because I've just turned in my retirement paperwork. After Mary's wedding, I'm returning to Jamaica to live. I am in my element there, no cell phone connection or email. It is a totally disconnected life, and I love it. I am able to exercise daily and eat right, and I have not only been able to get fit, but to lose all that weight I have been trying to lose for so long. Those are my plans. What are yours? I don't have any plans. I am just living day to day trying to forget how I messed up our marriage. I'll be okay. I will find an apartment near Mary and eventually go back to work. I'm not in any hurry to return to work, but someday my share of our money will run out. How can you afford to retire? Living in Jamaica is cheap. It is a simple life, and I don't need any of the trappings we have here. I can live there and still not touch any savings or have to sell stocks. I will be okay. This house should sell for $1 million, so we will have that to share too. Have you seen Mary? No, but I talked to her for almost an hour on the phone this morning, and I made her a promise that I hope you will help me keep. I promised Mary we would be at her wedding as a couple. I don't want anything to ruin Mary's special day. Do you know when Jim is flying in for the wedding? He arrives next Wednesday, and I had planned to meet him at DFW unless you want to. I was hoping he would stay here at the house. I would like to go to the airport with you to meet Jim. We haven't seen him in over a year, and maybe we should meet him together. I would like that. This is a big house. Would you like to stay here as well? It would be nice to have everyone in the house again, and you know we are having the reception here after the wedding. The giant mark will go up on Monday. The caterers have all the food and drink ready to go. And so that was how it went. Jan and I seemed to pick up just like we did before the affair. We could talk without getting angry and were completely rational with each other. We worked tirelessly together arranging for Mary's marriage, and having Jim Jr. there to help was a blessing. The night before her marriage, Mary stayed in the house with all of us. We all felt the tension, but having our family together one more time was very special. We all knew the house would be gone by next year, and there would be no more family time in our old home. Mary's wedding went without a hitch. She was so beautiful, and I felt I had lost my daughter. I knew her husband was quite a catch, but silently hoped he realized the real catch was Mary. Fresh flowers were everywhere, and of course champagne flowed all night. We had one of the leading bands from Dallas, and there was dancing till the early hours of Sunday. Jan and I danced almost all night. I promised Mary we would be a couple, and I don't think we disappointed anyone. Jan looked fabulous, and of course her dress, although ankle length, was split almost to her waist. I thought I cleaned up pretty well too. Having lost so much weight and having a bronze tan, My tuxedo looked and fit like a glove. Jan and I shared many of the dances, and I found my body responding to her as it always did in the past. We finally saw off the last of the partygoers and staggered back to the house. Jan had to remove her heels as her feet had seen one too many dances. I'm not sure who held who up, but together we staggered into the master bedroom. Jan said, "We have been a couple all night, and I can't remember the last time I had so much fun. Please stay with me tonight." I was drunk and a bit overwhelmed. Jan said, "I can't ever remember having such a good time. You know, if we sleep in the same bed, we will share more than the bed. One more time for old time's sake, please." Jan sensed something was wrong and was immediately by my side. "What's wrong, Jim? Tell me, Jan, are you still screwing David?" She was silent and looked shocked. "So, I was right. You were still screwing him." I could not control Jim. I got weak. "Please forgive me. Don't leave me." "Why should I stay? For what?" "For you to rub your lover's tool in my face." "Sorry, Jan. I still have a spine and will not take sloppy seconds." "I'm sorry, Jan, but I can't do this. I know you are still screwing someone and I'm done. I'm not sure if I can love you." I left Jan crying and packed my bag and drove to the Holiday Inn. My cell phone woke me the next morning, and it was my son. "Dad, what did you say to Mom last night?" "She cried all night, and today she is a total wreck. This is a little awkward talking to you, but Mom offered to have sex with me last night, but she is still having sex with someone else. I'm done. I almost considered giving her another chance, but now I'm finished. There's no going back now. I'm not calling her names, but I'm not happy right now. I know you fly back today. I will come over in 2 hours to drive you to the airport, but I don't want your mother to go, and I don't want to see her." I stayed for a further 3 days before I returned to Jamaica. Frank had been made an offer from the hospital to settle out of court. The offer was $500,000, but we settled out of court for $750,000, and after taxes and Frank's fees, I was left with $500,000. That would go a long way. I said my goodbyes to everyone except Jan and boarded my plane for the next chapter in my life. Life was good. I renovated my little bungalow and bought a used Jeep. I continued to run on the beach and lay in the sun. Occasionally, I would get mail or a postcard from one of the kids. One day, I got a letter from Frank. He brought me up to date on all the news. My divorce had gone through without a hitch, and now I was a free man. Jan had won both her court cases, with the hospital paying $5 million, and Alexander was charged $1 million that he didn't have and had to declare bankruptcy. Good for Jan. She was set for life and wouldn't have to worry about money. Frank also mentioned that the house was sold and most of the furniture went into storage. There was no word about Jan and where she living or how she was doing, not that I really cared. She had hurt me twice. There wouldn't be a third time. I heard from Mary about once a month, and she always just called me a fool and said Mom was fine, not to worry. I worried that Mary had given up on me. Jim Jr. wasn't very good about staying in touch, but I didn't worry because he had an active social life. Several wonderful months passed, and slowly I began feeling human again and desired to again be in the company of a beautiful woman. Just a few miles away were the main commercial areas of the island that contained many of the resorts that make the island famous. Many middle-aged women come to the resorts for different reasons, but they all have one common denominator, and that is they all want sex. The resorts have dances 3 or 4 times a week, and it's rare that I am unable to pick up a nice-look woman for an evening of fun. This is usually preceded by lots of dancing and wine. So I found myself having more frequent sex than in the past, and without the benefit of the little blue pills. I realized that my fitness level and diet must contribute heavily to my newfound sexual prowess. That is how I met Linda. She was short, about 5 feet 2 inches, with brunette hair with deep blue eyes. Linda was an investment broker and needed a break from the stress of the stock market and the daily pressures of making people money. We danced the night away and drank copious amounts of wine. The music was still playing when she asked me to take her outside for fresh air. We strolled down to the beach when she just turned and kissed me. Soon, we drilled fast and furious for 5 minutes before I came. Linda's climax preceded mine, and feeling her come triggered my own. We talked, and I discovered she was staying at the resort for a month, so I suggested showing her around the island. Naturally, we ended the tour back at my bungalow. To put it mildly, sex with Linda was awesome. Linda, although being 38, had never been married or had children and had never found the right man. She wasn't sure about children, but she did want to find the right person one day and settle down. Linda spent the entire month with me in my bungalow, only returning to the resort for more clothes. We never declared our love for each other, but there was an undertone that portrayed that message without us actually using the words. Her 30-day vacation was coming to an end, and neither of us wanted to spoil the mood about talking about what would happen when she left. The night before Linda was due to leave, we moved her back into her room at the resort. There was a dance that night, as was typical, before a large group left. Naturally, we attended since we both loved to dance. We were getting hot and sweaty when I noticed her across the room. They were in a booth and were doing everything but screwing. Linda immediately sensed something was wrong and asked me. I just replied that I had seen my ex across the room engaging in inappropriate sex with her boyfriend, who I had assumed had long disappeared. I told Linda that I had to say something to them, so we approached their booth. Jan, I see that my suspicions were correct and that you never stopped seeing this a-hole. Jan pushed David away and immediately started straightening her dress. David, what are you doing here? I live here. Have you forgotten? You told me your affair was over and you never wanted to see this creep again. What's going on? Was it all lies? David Alexander, Jan's old boss, had until now just been sitting there and listening. He now got out of the booth and he must have been 6 feet 5 inches and weighed 250. He towered over me. Linda, obviously frightened, tried to hide behind me. You must be the puny husband. You are divorced, so who Jan sees and what she does is no concern of yours, although I will rub the fact in your face that we have never stopped screwing. Yes, I suspected that, however. I don't like being lied to and deceived. My witch of an ex-wife has been doing that. We were in love once and never would have lied to each other. I can only blame you for changing the woman I loved. Your actions broke up your marriage and mine, and the word scum-sucker is not strong enough for the unhappiness you have caused. I should have seen it coming but didn't. He laid a haymaker on me and I was totally knocked out. He held me up with one hand and continued hitting me with the other hand. Linda, standing behind me, sprayed him with pepper spray, something I didn't even know she carried. Alexander didn't stop his assault, although he was temporarily stunned. Linda was wearing Jimmy Choo stiletto heels and took aim and kicked him square in the balls with the point of her shoe. He finally released me and I dropped to the floor. By now, bouncers were all over our table and Linda explained how this man had assaulted me. There were several witnesses. An ambulance was called and I was taken to the hospital. I was unconscious and had a concussion with cracked ribs. The next morning, after regaining my senses, I was interviewed by the police, who asked me if I wanted to press charges, and naturally I said yes. Linda was holding my hand and had been with me all night. She was barefooted and looked like she had been in a tornado. I asked her what happened after he knocked me out and she told me. I replied that he should not have messed with my woman. Linda looked at me and said, "Am I your woman?" I didn't mean for it to happen, but yes, I have fallen in love with you. I would be honored for you to be my woman. The past 30 days have been the most memorable and joyous time of my life. I have never had so much fun and have never been so comfortable with anyone in my life. I must confess I have fallen in love with you as well. Please stay with me. Don't go back to work and your old life. I'm not rich, but we would have enough for a comfortable life without ever having to work again. I love you, but need a little time to think about giving everything up. Part of me says without hesitation, yes, but I have some things I need closure to before making that commitment. Can you understand? Take as long as you need. You know where I live. Linda kissed me and was gone as she had a plane to catch. I felt like the second love of my life just walked away from me. I stayed in the hospital for 2 days. I understand Alexander was out on bail but possibly facing jail time. I packed a small suitcase and returned to Dallas to see my lawyer. Frank was happy to see me but was appalled to see that I had been beaten. Jim, what brings you back to civilization? I need legal advice. Do you remember that I received a small settlement from the hospital? Yes, it was for $750,000. Why? Well, I was wondering that since Jan and I were still technically married, is she entitled to half of that under the community property law? Yes, technically, she is, but her settlement was for $5 million. Why would she want half of yours? I don't know if she is interested or not in my settlement, but I want half of her payment. I was perfectly content with her having it because I thought she had terminated her affair with her ex-boss and agreed to all my conditions. However, I have recently discovered that she didn't stop seeing him, even after we separated and before the divorce. In fact, she is still seeing him. I want some of her blood now. I told Frank where to find her, and that afternoon he got on a plane to Jamaica and personally delivered the paperwork to Jan. He later reported she almost shit in her pants because she had already spent a good portion of her settlement money. Reluctantly, she wrote the check. I stayed with Mary and her husband and told her what I had discovered. Mary said she wondered, but Mom had denied seeing David. I asked if she was sure Mom was going to the counselor or to see her lover. Mary didn't know. Frank returned the next day with good news. Jan had reluctantly agreed to split the money minus her share of my settlement. I guess I squeezed the last drop of blood that was possible. I returned to Jamaica and upon arriving at my bungalow discovered Linda sitting on my patio. She ran to me and said, "If you can stand me, I'm here to stay. If you can tolerate an old man, would you do me the honors of marrying me?" Without any hesitation, yes, 1,000,000 times yes. Linda and I were married on the beach in Jamaica. Both of my kids were there as some of Linda's friends. We were financially secure and continued our carefree beach life. Life was good. Jan, having spent much of her settlement money, had to return to work and was never able to form a lasting relationship. David Alexander had to spend a year in jail and faced a bleak future upon his release, as now he was a felon, bankrupt, and divorced. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.